Hello, and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today, Ryan?
Talking about food.
Food. Yes, that is a very relevant topic. It's almost 10:30 in the morning, and we haven't had breakfast, so my stomach's already growling. But the inspiration...
That's what we're just going to talk about.
The inspiration for this podcast episode actually came from a trip that we made to the Buford Farmers Market here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Shut up.
No, they're not sponsoring us, but they could if they wanted to.
Yeah, the Buford Highway Farmers Market.
Oh, did I miss a word?
Yeah.
My bad. Yeah, so the Buford Highway Farmers Market.
The Buford Highway Farmers Market.
It's probably one of the most incredible grocery stores I've ever been to in my whole life.
I find it hard to believe that there exists in the world a better grocery store than that one.
Somebody send us an email if there's one better than the Buford Highway.
Yeah, if anyone's been there,
Farmers Market.
If anyone's been there, let us know. And if you live in Atlanta and you haven't been there, get over there.
And if you live in Atlanta and you want to go with us, send us an email.
Yeah.
Because we're down.
So anyways, the Buford, whatever, it's a long name, grocery store. It's not a farmer's market, it's a grocery store. But it is this vast expanse of food. But the
it's
thing
like
that's
Costco sized, hey? Like,
yeah,
it's massive.
But it's smaller than, it's not.
I think it's Costco sized.
It's smaller than Costco, but
it's not smaller than Costco.
Okay. May or may not be smaller than Costco.
It's about a Costco size.
Maybe Canadian Costco. I'm assuming down here there's some big ass Costcos.
Okay, yeah, maybe. We haven't been to a Costco in Texas yet.
But so we walk in, go into the produce section, and it's like the most astounding produce section I've ever seen in my life. It's not like the nicest looking grocery store, but just the varieties of things. They had 9 different types of bananas and plantains. And so there's like Thai bananas, baby bananas, some other name of bananas, Hawaiian plantains, green plantains, regular plantains, some other plantain.
And then we went to go get ginger, and there's 3 types of ginger.
Yeah, the Chinese ginger, Ecuadorian ginger, and Costa Rican ginger.
It's like, how do you pick which ginger you want?
The produce section was larger than some small grocery stores I've been in. And it had basically anything you could ever imagine. So we got soursop and breadfruit.
Which are both Jamaican, or like fruits that we've had in Jamaica.
Yeah, Caribbean food. And then, just everywhere you go, you're like, wow, what is this? What's this? What's that? You could buy whole sugar canes. And then, so throughout the other areas of the store, there's an aisle for basically any type of ethnic food possible. Well, I'm sure that, okay, not every type, but most of the types.
Don't get our listeners too excited.
Most of the types that you'd want, except for, of course, Canadian food. They didn't have a Canadian aisle.
I think that there was bacon and maple syrup throughout the grocery store. So I think that they basically covered Canada at some point.
Maybe.
It was cool though, because as we were going down each aisle, like we started with sort of the Hispanic foods into like Latin American foods, and into Jamaican, Asian, European, like almost everything. We were brought back to all of these cool foods that we've eaten abroad. And that's sort of what actually inspired this episode, I think.
Yeah, it was this really great experience of just shopping, but you're constantly just being reminded of all these amazing things you've had. And you go, I think we walked into the Argentinian aisle, and there's mate, and I'm like, oh, I should get a bag of mate. And then I was like, what are those things that they were like the kind of like wagon wheel type things people were eating down there? Oh, alfajores. They're like literally right beside here.
Like literally right there.
And we go into, I don't remember which aisle it was, but we were obviously excited about plantain chips because plantain chips are delicious. And there are, I don't know, like 15 types of plantain chips. And there's a hot sauce aisle that has like 100 different types of hot sauce.
Yeah. And then we discovered like the Jamaican foods, and we're like, oh, we should make ackee and saltfish, which is a traditional Jamaican dish that we had while we were down there. We couldn't find ackee in the fruit aisle. And then we get down to the Jamaican like section or whatever, and there's like, I don't know, 7 different types of aki. Like which brand of aki should we get? Just so crazy. And you had a pretty cool moment experiencing a foreign woman feeling like pretty excited.
Yeah, walked up into like the Russian aisle, and there was 2 people there who looked like they must have, I don't know, maybe bid for Russia or something, but they had found something. The girl like looked like she was so excited and like looked like she might have cried because she found this like one type of snack, and she like grabbed it and I like walked off somewhere, and I was like, oh, this is the most amazing grocery store I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, and I know we talked about it obviously when you told me the story, but I just think that's such a beautiful thing, like being so far from home and having this grocery store that has these comforts of home, like when you're in this really foreign place. And it's something that I think I really take for granted on a day-to-day basis, that, I mean, even traveling down in the United States, for the most part, they have all of the foods that I really like to eat back home outside of Old Dutch chips, which are not a day-to-day basis food for me, and Caesars, which are also not a day-to-day basis food. So outside of that, I mean, I can get everything plus more down here in the US. And sometimes I forget that there's these things for people who have immigrated or who are traveling or who have moved over to the United States that they just can't get unless their families can afford to send it to them. And that can be really expensive. And I mean, the Asian section was so crazy.
We had been in there for like 45 minutes walking up these aisles. We had gone down the tortilla aisle, and then the Jamaican aisle, and the Argentinian aisle, and I think I'd been through the European ones. And you kind of round a corner. There's like a whole fish market in there. Round a corner, and then you go, wham, Asian section of the store, which it already was like a really large store without that. But then you got like Korean, Taiwanese, Japanese, Chinese, Indian, Filipino. There's an aisle for each of these things with all the foods you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, like, did you say Korean? So there's a big Korean section. Japanese, Chinese, yeah. Like every, I'm just repeating you. And I mean, it was a gentle reminder to me that I haven't even, there's a lot of places that I haven't traveled. Like we haven't been to Japan or China or Korea. And so obviously we didn't have as much of a connection with those sections, but it's even cool to walk up and down like Thailand and Vietnam and Indonesian and see these things. It's like, oh yeah, I ate that. I tried that. Like the price of sushi was just incredible over there. They had like this raw sushi bar.
Yeah, but that's not as relevant to the travel aspect.
No, it's not, but it's just a cool feature. I mean, we've talked about this grocery store for a while now. It's awesome.
But yeah, so what that sparked in us was a lot of reminiscing about travel and about food. And food is something that obviously is a big part of traveling somewhere. When you go to Italy, you want to eat pizza and ice cream. And when you go to Thailand, you want to eat Thai food.
Curry, and you want to eat pho when you go to Vietnam, or pho.
But I guess I hadn't thought too much about it as this like great way to kind of bring back memories and to reminisce about things. But we bought kind of a Jamaican meal. We bought the ingredients for, came home, made it, listened to some reggae music, and kind of like reminisced about our time in Jamaica. And yeah, it was just got us thinking about how much food is a part of travel.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, the way that food can really, like the flavors of food can really take you back to those experiences. Like as we were driving home, Ryan opened one of our bag of plantain chips, and it's kind of like you close your eyes and you're like, where am I when I'm eating these? And it's like every bus we ever took in South America. Like that's, it just instantly transports you back to these like really, really clear memories, which is pretty cool. I know that there's like certain scents that can do that for some people, and music does it for other people. And food is definitely something that does it for me. And I'm assuming other people out there as well.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all these things, like the music, the food, photos.
Yeah, like it's this cool way of being transported back and just remembering what it was like to be in that place. It was really cool to come home and, we made the aki and the saltfish. We'll post a photo of it on the show notes. It turned out pretty well.
Yeah, and breadfruit.
Breadfruit, yeah, which is basically, I don't know, it's like a fruit that you kind of fry up and it tastes like...
Kind of like a sweet potato.
Yeah. But it's kind of like, it's very carby. Like it's very much like eating fried bread, which is kind of delicious, but it has the word fruit in it. So kind of feels like better than eating fried bread, I guess. So we're going to talk about some of our favorite foods from our travels around the world and sort of the memories and experiences that those foods remind us of and bring us back to. Do you want to start?
Yeah. So when I started thinking about food with stories attached to them, the first thing that came to my mind is a story that we've actually told on another episode of the podcast about being in Thailand. And we were on Koh Phi Phi, one of the Thai islands, more popular Thai islands. And we found this really, really awesome curry restaurant.
It was called Papaya, wasn't it?
I think it was called Papaya. I can't remember though. But anyways, delicious food, but they had cats all over the place. There was like cats roaming around that climb up on your table. There was at one point in time one of those like glass fronted doors, or one of those refrigerators with glass doors on it, and there was a cat inside of it, just like cooling down because it was Thailand and it was hot. I bet we ate there like 2-3 times, and then towards the end of our time on Koh Phi Phi, I got extremely ill and spent about like a week and a half on the toilet.
Yeah.
And got really sick.
It's kind of interesting because that was actually a restaurant that was recommended in Lonely Planet, and I find that the internet's way better for... Lonely Planet has like its pros, but I find the internet's way better for restaurants and hostels because it's way more up to date. But we went to check it out anyways, and it was kind of off of a side street and almost in like a garage type building. Like it was almost like...
It was really like a hole in the wall.
Yeah, and there was a few kind of like stores or restaurants beside each other, sort of in what looks like should be storage units as we know it in North America. Kind of this like metal door that goes up, and then they must just like put it down and put a lock on it when they close up for the day. And it was just so normal that the cats were there. Like it was almost like, oh, there's a cat sitting there, like find a different table, like shoo humans. And we had been in Asia for 6 weeks by that point?
Yeah,
5
pretty
weeks?
close.
So it's just, there's some people out there who are probably listening like, what? You ate at a restaurant with cats? Like, I know my mom was so appalled. Like, she's like, what? You ate at a restaurant where there's cats on the table? I was like, it's just like Asia. I don't know. We were just used to it by that point.
And that may not have had anything to do with the whatever travelers issues that came up afterwards. But
travelers.
It was funny though how desensitized to the whole like food hygiene we were at the time. Not food hygiene, but I know if I walk into a restaurant here now, I'm like, and there's grime on the floor, or you go into the washroom and it's kind of like not really like cleaned up well. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling uncertain about this restaurant. But at the time being over there, we were like, whatever, it tastes good.
Yeah, and tastes good is like an understatement. Like that curry was freaking delicious. Like that was really good curry.
Yeah, and it took, I think, probably like 3 months before I could eat curry again without feeling ill.
Yeah. And so when you think about papaya, like, do you think about being ill? Like, do you link that directly to it? Or is your memory more of a positive memory?
I would definitely not eat there again.
Okay, that was my next question.
But so one of my favorite foods from traveling that I discovered traveling is kind of Thai curry, especially green curry.
I thought you really liked masaman too, didn't you?
Yeah, I like masaman. I like panang. Panang?
Panang, yeah.
Yeah, but I'd never had Thai food before going to Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
And then being there, obviously, you're going to eat a bunch of Thai food, and I really like fell in love with it. It was so cheap, so delicious. But then one of the funny things about traveling and finding a food in a country with a low cost of living is you come home and you're like, wow, I'd really love to go get Thai food. and you go out for Thai food and it's like, oh, this bowl of green curry is going to cost you $15.
Yeah, like to get a meal that we would have paid like $5 to $10 US for in Thailand is like 40 to 50 at home. So it's just like the difference is shocking. You know, it's like 4 times more.
Yeah, and I think we've had that experience with some other foods too, where you fall in love with them traveling, but then when you get home, you're like, oh, I'd love to eat this more often, but it just feels kind of wrong in a way to pay so much when you're paying $1 for a bowl of curry before.
So much better in Thailand too. I actually have Thai food is on my list as well, but mine was specific to eating pad Thai from the street carts. And I remember it was one of our first experiences when we arrived in Bangkok, and we made the mistake of staying on Khao San Road, which is just a mental place. Like, it's so busy, it's packed, it's really overwhelming, it's noisy constantly. But they have these really cool food vendors. It's basically people with these almost like carts that you would expect to get like a popsicle out of. But nope, they're out there like fried rice, pad Thai. And I'd never really experienced Thai food either. I mean, I grew up in a small town. Thai food wasn't really like on my radar. There's not a ton of Thai food restaurants in like the place where I grew up. And I was like, yeah, pad Thai, I've heard of it. Apparently it's good. Give it a try. And they kind of like stir it up, like cook it on this grill that's just sitting there. And I remember feeling super sketchy about it and wondering if I was going to get sick from it and wanting no meat because, you know, they just cook the raw meat there and you don't know how well it's cooked or if it's clean and all that sort of stuff. And then them slapping it in a styrofoam container, like handing you some chopsticks, like $1 for this massive portion, and eating it so uncertainly. And like my mouth is actually watering just thinking about it because it was so delicious. Just one of the best things I've ever eaten. And I was hooked on like street pad Thai from there on out.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty, or at least in Thailand, I know a lot of people who go there come back and are still kind of in love with Thai food.
Yeah, it's something that I've talked to other travelers about where I'm like, oh, do you have the hardest time finding like reasonably priced, like delicious Thai food? And they're like, yes, like let's just go to Thailand. So it's definitely not just us, but yeah, fabulous, fabulous food there.
And what else springs to mind when you start thinking about travel food memories?
Yeah, so I have a really, really strong memory of being in Hanoi before we went to Ha Long Bay, so northern Vietnam. And we went to this really delicious pho restaurant. And it was, you ordered Vietnamese coffee. And Vietnamese coffee is really cool because they put the cup down and it's got like a good half an inch thick of like sweetened condensed milk. And then they allow the coffee to drip through. So you like wait for it to come down before you drink it. And I remember feeling really confused when they brought it out and just like I was like, I don't understand what's going on here. Like, what's this like white sticky stuff at the bottom of this, of this like beverage? Like, this is weird and gross. Why did you order this? And so you were really patient and whatever with it. And you waited for it to drip down and then stirred it in. And you were like, oh my God, this is like the greatest thing ever. And I tasted it and I was like, yep, I need one of those too. And I just remember eating the delicious pho. And it was the first time that I'd really had pho, and I'm kind of like a pho junkie now. Like, I'll eat it. I mean, when I was at home, at least. Pho. I was like a pho junkie. I can't call it pho. It just feels wrong. I would eat it a ton at home. Like, I have a girlfriend. We'd go like once a month and eat it. And I mean, I could put back quite a bit of that big bowl of pho. But the Vietnamese coffee is something you just can't, it's not the same. Like, you go to a Vietnamese restaurant, I feel like it's just not as good. Like, there was something about being there when it was so hot outside and ordering this hot coffee and enjoying it in an air-conditioned restaurant. And I know there was a few times too where you got iced coffees and whatnot, and I would be like, oh no, I don't want one. And then I'd end up drinking like half of your iced coffee because it was so good. Like the sweetened condensed milk, it's genius. Yeah.
And then I think it took a while before we figured out like how much sugar was in sweetened condensed milk.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is why this tastes so good.
Which is better not to know.
Yeah. To your point about it not being as good other places, I think one of the things about, maybe that was a really Canadian about. But about kind of like globalization and how interconnected the world is, and how awesome it is that you can go to a grocery store and find foods from like, I don't know, 70 countries or 100 countries. You can get amazing food from all these different places in Atlanta or in Toronto or in whatever big city you're in. So it's pretty amazing to be able to go get like really good Vietnamese food right here if we wanted to, or really good Thai food, or really good Ethiopian food, or Argentinian food, whatever we want. It's available to us here.
Yeah,
totally. And a lot of times you can find probably, I think there's something about, I can't remember if it's London or New York, where it's like they've got the best Italian food in the world, the best Indian food in the world, the best Thai food in the world. Maybe New York.
Yeah, it's probably somewhere like New York. London probably has that too, because huge amount of immigrants, lots of people moving, they start businesses. It's also big cities, right? There's demand for all the like international food. Yeah,
and really intense competition to make really good food.
I think there's something along that same point in terms of it seeming better is, if we were to whip up a Vietnamese coffee with sweetened condensed milk right now, I feel like there'd be a certain part of me that was like, oh, I shouldn't be drinking like the sugary milk. Like there's something about traveling where it just seems so much better because you're in this mindset where you're going to try new things and you're going to treat yourself and you're kind of like YOLO every day. Yeah, whereas at home you get into this like, no, that's bad for me. I shouldn't eat that.
Yeah. And you can think of things as a cultural experience instead of just, you eating like I don't know, some sort of
sweet
glutton because you're at home. The thing, when I was thinking about it earlier, that came to mind for that was being in Italy. And just like, as soon as we arrive in Italy, I'm like, yes, I can eat all the pizza I want to eat.
Yeah.
And so in Italy, generally, I was just eating a ton of pizza. And pizza is just delicious.
I love pizza.
Regardless of being in Italy or you're just regardless.
Pizza's just good.
That's not a word. But yeah. And then especially being in Florence, we just ate so much gelato. And it's not.
I love that made your list because it's on mine too.
And maybe gelato is better there. Maybe, I don't know. It's just pretty generally good everywhere. But the thing about being there is that you can be like, okay, this is the home of gelato, and I need to eat it here.
Okay,
like twice a day.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but we found like a delicious gelato place in Florence, and I remember we found our way there and it was kind of really tricky to get there. And thank goodness you're great with directions because you refound it. And I remember you went for like a triple scoop one time. I think it was the second gelato of the day. You went for a triple scoop. But just the most like, fabulous, like dark chocolate. I really like to get dark chocolate and then a sorbet, like dark chocolate and raspberry sorbet. Like, just get in my belly. So delicious. No, you're not feeling that?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree.
Staring at me like I'm a fat kid. Gelato though is, I don't know, gelato is good at home and you can probably find like a good gelato ice cream place or like a locally made ice cream place that's really good if you live in, like a city or a town. I'm certain there's great ice cream in Atlanta at more than one location. There's something about eating gelato in the home of gelato though, and taking in really good gelato and just like...
Yeah, and you have this context, like you're in this kind of really beautiful old city. It's summer, it's hot, people are speaking like Italian around you, and you've got this delicious, cold, refreshing cone full of sweet fattiness.
Sweet goodness, let's call it. It is so amazing though. Did you put anything else down for Italy, or because mine was just gelato? Being gluten-free, the whole pizza thing was a bit of an issue.
Yeah, but even there they have a type of pizza style food that does not contain gluten. Yeah,
I can't remember what it's called, but it's made out of chickpea flour, and that almost made the list actually, and I'm happy to talk about it because we discovered it when we went to Cinque Terre, which is the 5 cities along the coast. What?
I just feel like that's probably like a gross butchering of the pronunciation.
Probably. I'm not Italian, though. I'm not claiming to speak any Italian over here. I'm trying my best. It's on the west coast and in sort of northern Italy, so northwest part of the country, and just like fabulous. You can take the train all the way to the end and then walk your way back, and it's a really solid hike along the coast. You stop in 5 towns along the way, so you can kind of make it a luxurious day. Like, I think our first stop was for a wine, and our second stop was for like little appies, so we got like olives and some meats and stuff like that. And then we found this, I think Ryan got pizza, but I got this chickpea flour thing, and it was just like, being gluten-free in a country like Italy, I mean, it has like cons, right? Because there's a certain element to trying food in a country, and I tested it in France, and I was dashing to and from the bathroom waiting in line for the Eiffel Tower, and for me it's just not worth it because it makes me feel really, really sick. And so having this chickpea flour pizza crust thing was so great. And it was good. It was fried. It was like fried bread. It was a good time.
Yeah, it was one of the most, I think, enjoyable days of our trip, because you get this combination of hiking this really beautiful area, but then interspersed with breaks where you get to have a glass of wine and have olives and meat and have pizza, and then finally have ice cream or gelato at the end.
I was like, I like this Italian hiking thing. Like net calories, I guess, maybe. It was really hot.
Yeah, less of that like, oh, I'm going in the woods seclusion thing, but
yeah, and I mean, I like going in the woods and being secluded as well, but I think there was something really luxurious about this. Like, it was really hot that day, and I remember being really sweaty, so it felt really good to get to the first town and be like, yes, we're treating ourselves to a glass of wine here. Yeah. And then getting to the next one and being like, yes, I am eating chickpea flour bread.
Yeah, and Italy was really like, I knew I liked gelato. Shocker.
I like pizza. I like gelato. I like pasta.
And I knew I loved pizza. So we got there, and it was just like, okay, I can eat these things because I'm here. Which, I mean, I'm not trying to prevent myself from eating them other places. I just have a bit more of like, maybe I shouldn't eat pizza tonight. But
Chipotle 3 times a week.
One of the great things about traveling is discovering foods that I had no idea maybe that even existed or that even liked. And one thing that comes to mind for me would be being in Spain for the first time, and we went to the Running of the Bulls in Pamplona, and in the morning, so when we talked about it in our Running of the Bulls episode, but the Running of the Bulls is kind of like an event that happens overnight. Like the festival, like people wake up in the evening, watch some fireworks, party all night long, and then the Running of the Bulls happens in the morning, and that's kind of the nightcap.
Yeah.
And after the Bulls run, they end up in a stadium where the real show begins, because they release bulls into the bull ring, and there's all these drunk and some sober idiots running around trying to avoid getting gored by small bulls. And we were sitting there, and there's some people in front of us from Mexico who were just we didn't speak any Spanish, and they didn't really speak English at all.
I said pollo.
But I don't remember the context of this, but the guy just like turned around and was like, here, like gave us part of his sandwich. And I'm like, for feeling a bit weird. And then it's a baguette with some sort of omelet thing inside. Bite into it, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And it's tortilla de patata, which has since become a really favorite food, which you can't really find too many places.
No, you really can't. And I mean, it's cool that we discovered it basically in our first few days of being in Spain, because it's one of those things that every bus station we went to, every train we took, it's like you can get it made really, really well, or you can get it more as like a fast food sandwich. And it was nice for me because I could eat everything but the baguette around it. And it's essentially just an omelet inside with like onions and potato. And it's cooked in a lot of oil. It's really good. And the only reason I know that is because we actually were craving it when we got home from that trip, and Ryan made it. And we actually like tune down the oil because we're like, oh, it's one of those things. Like, you're fine with it when you're there. Like, it's not like we came home fat or anything, but you get home and you're like, oh, I really shouldn't be eating this much oil. But it is so, so, so good.
Yeah, like you said, it's just potatoes, onions, eggs, but made into a breakfast sandwich. So it's fantastic. And
way better than McDonald's.
Like, if we had never been in that situation, I don't think I ever would have found out about it.
Like, would you have been intrigued to taste it? Like, maybe you would have eaten it at a bus station one day when you were hungry in the morning. But, I mean, it's not that exciting looking. Like, it doesn't look like anything special.
Yeah, but then it becomes kind of this, like, staple while you're there.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that. That was delicious. Something that I really enjoyed in Spain was I had a really hard time eating in like a lot of the trains and stuff, and I absolutely despised olives pre-Spain, and I don't know what it was. Like, they always would bring olives to the tables as, I feel like they would charge us for it, but they'd bring like bread and oil and like olives. And because I can't eat bread, I just started like eating the olives because I'd be really hungry. We constantly made this mistake of sort of like trying to eat around siesta time in Spain, which is kind of like 2 till 4-ish. And not a lot of things are open and people kind of move really slow during that time. And for some reason, we always hit lunchtime around like 2:33. And we'd be absolutely starving. And so Ryan would be eating the bread, soaking it up in the delicious olive oil and balsamic. And I'd be picking at the olives. And prior to that trip, I hated them. And then I don't know, I tried them again. And I was like, what do I hate about these delicious, salty, wonderful things? Like, they're amazing. And then it turned into this, like, I'd buy cans of olives for long train trips and just eat olives out of cans. And since then, olives have become like a real staple in my life.
Yeah, and I think for me, you started eating them. One day we were at a hostel in, I think, Cordoba, Spain, and you had just bought a can of olives to eat for dinner. And I was still like, no,
life.
Definitely not on this olive thing yet. But then when we got to Greece, it's kind of when I snapped into it.
It's funny that we both went from disliking olives to liking olives on the same trip. It is a difference, right? Like, it's the green olives that they mostly eat in Spain, and it's Kalamata olives that they eat in Greece. And I mean, I hated those ones before too, and I also fell in love with them. I mean, let's talk about that. Greek salad, like the most delicious salad in the whole world.
Yeah, I think so. Probably.
It's a big statement.
Maybe papaya salad.
Did you like Greek salad prior to going to Greece?
No, if you had tried to offer me Greek salad, I would have been like, nah, get on my face.
So if you were at somebody else's house, like say we'd been at a friend's house and their parents were serving us and their parents served Greek salad, would you have like just said no thank you, or would you have taken it and then kind of like eaten the feta out of it?
I don't remember liking feta that much.
What? You're crazy.
But yeah, when we were there, I was like, just getting into it and being like, oh my God, all this feta, oil, tomatoes. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And then it's since become one of my favorite things to eat.
Oh yeah. We've made Greek salad so many times. It's hard to find like the same quality of ingredients. Something that's really cool about the island of Santorini is that they grow like little like red tomatoes. They call them Santorini tomatoes. And so they also make unpasteurized feta there, and then they grow their own olives and they make their own olive oil from it. So you get this salad, and it's just so much of the stuff is local. Like, I think almost everything of the salad is local, and it tastes so much better. Like, it really tastes very fresh. Yeah.
So one thing that I want to talk about while we're talking about this is this idea of, are things that are local better?
I mean, I think there's something to say for getting, like, having food, like, picked when it's pretty much ripe and delivered pretty fresh to you. Like, so something I notice about traveling in southern US versus living up in Canada is that fruit is a lot better down here. Like, we don't get good mangoes. We don't get good papayas up north. Like, it's pretty rare that those are good. because they have to travel so far, they get picked when they're not ripe, and it's a really small time period that you actually get to enjoy them for. Whereas down here, I feel like we're a lot closer to the source of them, and I just feel like they're a little bit better. Even avocados, I noticed the difference. Like, how many times did you go to the grocery store in Canmore and it's like not a single avocado is within like 3 days of being ripe?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure there would be a longer time. Like, I think the produce that is received here in Atlanta may be picked at the exact same time as the produce that goes to Canada.
Maybe, but
I think
travels
one thing
like longer on some sort of like freight. Freight.
And it is just warmer here, so things ripen quicker, more humid.
Yeah. I think that there is something to say for food coming, like, so there's a farmer in Santorini who sends tomatoes to the restaurant and they're there within like the same day. I think there's definitely something to say for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And something as well is this idea that it's not an idea, but you can't buy unpasteurized cheeses in North America.
Except Quebec, yeah.
Oh, you can in Quebec. Which is
French Canada.
So stupid. Like, I'm not a cheese expert enough to say, it's definitely better pasteurized versus unpasteurized, but it should be something that people can choose to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole topic for a different podcast, but yeah, I agree with that for sure. And I think that, I mean, I really enjoyed feta there, and I feel like it's very rare that I have feta that's as good as what I had when I was in Greece. And like, I liked Greek salad before for sure. I like love it now though. Like, it's definitely one of my favorite foods, like definitely my favorite type of salad. Like, and I'm always attracted to it when I look at a menu, but I feel like I've ordered it enough times now that I'm kind of disappointed. There's a lot of places that really disappoint me with Greek salad. Like, I'll kind of wait. I'll either make my own Greek salad at home so that I know it's how I like Greek salad, which is the Greek way, or I'll eat it at a Greek restaurant.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think most times,
like the shaved feta, I'm like, oh, what is this? I want like a whole slab of feta. And that's what you get in Greece, like a big freaking slab, like the size of your face on your salad.
Yeah, and then you get to pour your own balsamic over it.
And your own olive oil. And it's just so like delicious, good fats.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just so delicious.
That's the thing that's made me most hungry so far. So maybe pivoting to South America, what are some foods that you had no idea you liked, didn't know existed, or maybe even disliked that you discovered while we were there?
Can I say one more European thing before we pivot continents? Paprika Pringles. I know it's like nothing big, it's like nothing fancy. You cannot, you can't get paprika Pringles like anywhere but Europe, it seems. Like, we couldn't even find them at the Buford Highway Farmers Market. Like,
I bet someone sells those on Amazon.
Probably. We should order some. But I don't know. There's something about the paprika flavor. And I feel like I've gotten other friends to testify to this. Like, I make them try it. They're like, it's paprika. Like, it's basically barbecue. And I'm like, but better. And then they try it and they agree. And it's so amazing to me. I really connect with people when they're like, oh, have you ever had paprika Pringles? And I'm like, yes, we're soulmates. Because they're just so magical. And so outside of paprika Pringles being really delicious, we like to treat ourselves to snacks when we transport ourselves from place to place. And so I have a lot of really great memories of pulling out the paprika Pringles on the high-speed trains going from city to city or country to country within Europe. And it was kind of always this treat for us to have the paprika Pringles. And then outside of that, I just think about being on Kentucky in Greece, and I really loved the crew that we were with. I feel like we have made some really good friends out of that. Rory Madigan, who's been on the podcast a few times now, is one of the people who we become super close with outside of that Kentucky group. And I just remember like nights kind of sitting around the pools, like playing cards, eating paprika Pringles, like daytimes going from place to place, eating paprika Pringles. It's kind of like this bonding food. I don't know. There's something about it.
I think something that's probably going on there is that it's this taste and food that's linked to these positive memories, but it's also something that is now kind of scarce because you can't buy it here. And so when things are scarce, people naturally value them as higher. So I think that, yeah, they taste pretty good, but it's also because they're not here and it's not available to you that it makes it more of like this, ooh, this thing was amazing. And it's kind of the same thing for, there's some things that aren't available in Canada that you can get in the States, like vanilla Coke or red vines, or for the longest time, like original Coors, the beer. And so I grew up not too long from the border. So we'd drive down across the border, get vanilla Coke, and you're like, oh, this is so delicious. But now that I'm here, I might drink a vanilla Coke. I kind of like the taste, but
it's pretty good with rum.
But it's like, I would almost be more likely to drive the hour to the States to buy the vanilla Coke than I am to drive to walk like the 2 minutes to a store where I could buy a vanilla Coke now that it's available there.
Yeah, totally. I definitely get that. It's kind of interesting because that makes me think about our like love of plantain chips and how that was sort of our like South American version of paprika Pringles. And it was this like, you know, constant treat when we were on bus rides. And I mean, it was kind of just a treat everywhere we went. We ate a lot of them. And I remember buying like a big bag of those and a big bag of Inca corn, which is like these massive chunks of corn that's been like fried and flavored. So good. And like stocking up on them essentially because we wouldn't be able to find them at home. And it's been interesting because we've been able to find both since being home, and plantain chips are quite easy to find.
Yeah, I don't know if it's more of like becoming a bit more of a trend or a location thing, but yeah, both of those things have since kind of migrated into our home lives.
Made their way north. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
Yeah, but one of the awesome things about traveling is maybe it's like sneaky awesome. When you go, you have these periods where you're going to go on a long train ride or a long bus ride. And you go to the grocery store and you're going to stock up on snacks for that trip. And especially like, I think back to, being in South America and we're like, okay, we got to get snacks. And we're like, what are we going to get? And we find these chips, but you also just like buy random things. So you're like, oh, these kind of look all right.
Yeah. You kind of just like, you kind of got to like guess at stuff and try stuff before you figure it out if you like it or not. And it's interesting because I had Inca corn the first time I went to South America, but I hadn't really had plantain chips because I traveled with a girl who like hates everything about bananas and like absolutely will not eat anything banana-esque. And so I hadn't really had plantain chips before, and we tried them and it was just like this fabulous discovery. Like I was just like, what? I love these. Like, I love these so much. And then now when I eat them, it takes me back to these like memories of being on buses. And it's kind of funny because we were talking about how music does it. But I remember bus rides, eating plantain chips, listening to like the Zac Brown Band CD, the one with Chicken Fried on it, and playing Candy Crush. And so by the time it got down to the song Natural Disaster, which like picks up a lot, I'd be like right into my Candy Crush zone, and I'd like be eating my plantain chips, and like, you know, just that song, eating plantain chips, takes me right back to like crushing candy on a bus in South America. For the win.
Yeah. Very cultural experience.
I mean, it was a bus ride, okay?
Yeah. And then something that made me think about was kind of sometimes when you're traveling or you're on a bus, you don't really have the options that you'd get if you were just like in a city. So when we were in Colombia, we took our first overnight bus ride from Bogota to Santa Marta, and it was like a 20-hour bus ride.
It was like a 16-hour bus ride turned 20 hours.
Yeah, and we were closing in. It was the morning. We'd made it through the night without dying. And the guy it's this weird thing where people will like just hop on the bus from the street and start selling shit. And he's selling these like since figured out are arepas.
Yeah.
But at the time I was like, what is that? I don't know. It looks kind of good. It looks kind of like an empanada. So I was like, okay, I'll buy that. And then I eat it, and it's got like hard-boiled eggs and was there like pickles on it or something?
I don't know. There's something weird in that one.
But it was cold, like this formerly fried food that is now cold. And you're like, why on earth did I buy this thing from this guy?
Thank goodness it was like 50 cents.
Yeah. So sometimes that trying things on the bus doesn't work out.
It's kind of interesting though, because arepas are really delicious. And I had an arepa when we were in Cartagena, and it was like made fresh off the street, and they've like put cheese in it and melted the cheese. And Ryan doesn't really like melty cheese, but
it was that weird kind of strange cheese.
It was delicious. I was just like in arepa heaven, because it's made out of corn, so I can eat it. It's like this fried cornbread type thing. It's like 2 pockets of it with like melted cheese stuffed inside of it. It was freaking delicious. I know that it was not your jam, but it was mine. I was quite happy with it.
And what other things did you find yourself coming home liking more after going to South America?
Actually, the 2 that come to mind are both beverages for me. So one of them we kind of already touched on was mate. Mate was a really cool thing that we learned about when we were in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and
drinking mate in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a cultured thing. It's almost like you're a local if you're drinking it out of the...
Yeah, but I remember
What's it called again?
Mate. The thing's called a mate.
Oh, okay. And then you drink the yerba out of it?
The bombilla is the straw, the mate is the cup, and the yerba is the thing inside.
Yeah, so we bought one of those, and we learned how to do it properly. And so, I mean, you see the locals doing it from Uruguay all the way through Argentina, and then a little bit in Chile as well, but more so like kind of Buenos Aires area. And it was just cool to learn how to do that and kind of be a part of it. And it gives you like the craziest caffeine buzz too, which is kind of fun. Just like, oh, my metabolism is speeding up right now.
Yeah, I would get so much of a buzz that I actually kind of crashed immediately. Just felt like completely overwhelmed. But it's this funny part of their culture where you see people walking around with thermoses and cups. And we were taking Spanish class, and the teacher, he'd have his mate thing on his desk. And I imagine if you go into an office there, everyone's probably, quite a few people probably have their little like mate that they're drinking. And one of the things that I loved about it was kind of the social aspect of it. So people in the park will all be sharing. It's kind of like as if you were like smoking weed and kind of like passing it around. It's like they're drinking mate.
Or like drinking a beer in the park or a bottle of wine or something like that.
Yeah, drinking a mate and passing it around. And one day, I can't remember where our bus was going. I think we were on a bus from El Calafate to Bariloche.
Oh, I forgot about this.
And the guy behind us is like, so any gas station you stop at, as if you'd see the tire pumping station, like the air pressure thing, maybe something behind it, and then this other thing behind it that's got a thermos on it or a mate sign on it, because there's a hot water tank outside at all these gas stations so people can fill up their thermoses. But he gets his mate going, and he's just like, oh, here, like, and we just sit around talking and drinking mate with this guy.
Yeah, we like pass the mate around. It's a pretty good time. It is very social, and it's cool to be a part of that for sure. I think that was an enjoyable thing. I forgot about that experience. That was fun though. So my second beverage that I really enjoyed, and that reminds me a lot of South America, I was drinking coffee at Juan Valdez in Colombia and Ecuador. It's like this local coffee shop that's
knockoff
franchised.
Of Starbucks.
Yeah, and it's just everywhere. And Colombia is amazing because it's got a lot of really cool landscape, but it's not super touristy, which makes it really cool. So it's not the type of place where you spend a ton of time checking stuff out and that sort of thing. It's a really great place to kind of hunker down, maybe learn a language, do some writing. Be a great place if you were an entrepreneur and you were looking to do some work. And Juan Valdez is definitely the place for that. And we spent so much time there, and I just have a lot of really fond memories of hanging out at Juan Valdez and drinking good lattes, and it's kind of funny. I like to drink Americanos with a little bit of milk, and they actually don't do that down there. Like if you want milk, you got to pay for it. Like there's no milk station like there is at every single coffee shop in North America. And so that was kind of an interesting learning for me. It's kind of like a particular coffee snob. I was like, okay, I got to like learn to like something else. Like that's okay. I can do this.
And it was kind of funny in Colombia because Colombia is this place like known for coffee, but a lot of the places you go there, they just have instant coffee.
Yeah.
Like that's all that is. So
Juan Valdez is like a nice treat.
Yeah,
It's not instant coffee.
you can get like your frozen blended super sweet thing. I remember they had these cheese croissants that I was all about. And the one thing that was beautiful about it was often we kind of found it in like our third city or something, and it was this like cool air conditioned place to hang out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and air conditioning in developing countries is this thing that it's really easy to take for granted. Like it's something about watching, you know, like The Amazing Race or something when they're in Asia. I'm like, oh man, it's so hot there. And I know that because I've been there, but you don't get that experience through TV.
Yeah, you don't get the smell or the heat.
Yeah, the smell or the heat. And those are two of the things that can really like kick your ass, I feel like. But walking around a city that, you know, doesn't really smell very good and it's kind of hot all day, and going back to an unair conditioned hostel is just like, you feel gross. So finding a coffee shop where it's air conditioned and it's cool and you can get a delicious beverage that kind of reminds you of home but isn't home is just, it's great. I remember when we got to Quito in Ecuador, we kind of like said goodbye to Juan Valdez when we left Medellin in Colombia. Like, oh, farewell, our love. Like, we'll see you again in the future. And when we got to Quito, we found a Juan Valdez, and it was just like this really magical moment of like, hello again. We found you. And we spent a lot of time at that Juan Valdez. But anyways, is there anything else in South America that kind of tickled your fancy?
Yeah, the last thing would be ceviche, which I had never really tried before going to Peru. Never tried before until we got to Lima, and then just all about it for like a week.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things we did in Lima, which I know is kind of a big thing for a lot of people traveling, is going to cooking classes. But we haven't actually done it very much at all. But we did a cooking class where we learned to make ceviche and a couple other things, which was a really cool experience.
Yeah, we made like a 3-course meal basically, which was really cool.
Really good, like fresh food, which is nice when it's hot out. And you can get all these like interesting varieties of it. Mm-hmm. But the thing I want to touch on was doing cooking classes as a way to kind of have a more like vivid food experience while you're traveling. Yeah,
I think that's a great suggestion. I know that there's a lot of offerings for that in Asia, and lots of people do that in Southeast Asia, learn how to cook, you know, Thai food or Vietnamese food or food in Laos, you know, wherever you are, you can kind of do those cooking classes. And I think it's a cool experience to see like all the work that goes into this dish that you're eating. Cause that's one thing that I always take for granted is like, we made ají de gallina in Peru, and it's this sort of like potato dish with this sauce, and where's potatoes, wasn't there?
I don't remember.
Okay, but it's like the sauce is a super complicated process, and it's got like 4 steps, and I was like, wow, it just seems like, you know, sauce, but there's actually so much like work that goes into it. Clearly I'm not a master chef over here. Yeah, definitely cooking classes are a great way to experience and to try different types of food, and then you know if you like it or not when you order it at a restaurant.
Yeah, and I think that it's something we're going to do more as we go traveling in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
As we become more older and sophisticated travelers.
And wise.
Debatable.
More cultured.
Debatable.
I'm hungry. I need to go eat something. Do you have anything else you want to talk about food?
Well, I think we could keep talking about foods we liked traveling all day. But one thing that I think came to my mind yesterday when we were shopping was like, oh, why haven't we gone out and kind of rekindled these memories more often?
Yeah, definitely. That's actually a really good point that Yeah, I kind of thought about that too, like making Jamaican food. I was like, why have we not done this? We've been home for so long. Why have we not done this before?
It's funny too, because sometimes I'm thinking about it and I'm like, what do I know how to make? And I kind of make the same stuff all the time, even though there are these foods that I know how to make and that I really enjoy, like, you know, a really good Greek salad or, I don't know, tortilla de patata, or I don't even know, some other stuff. Ceviche. I'm probably not going to make ceviche myself. But yeah, going out or even going, like finding a cool Thai restaurant and going to there and like thinking about what it was like to be in Thailand.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you go traveling, it's kind of like this investment. You get all this like memory and stories from that. And then you can kind of like forget about it if you don't think about it too often. But if you go and like rekindle that, especially, it's really nice having someone we've been there with.
Yeah, definitely. I think even just like grabbing some friends and getting them to go to a Thai restaurant, you can share with them the stories and your memories of being in Thailand is kind of a cool idea. It's kind of like, you know, having a photo book that you look back through, or having a photo album, or just photos in general that you go back through and you kind of are like, oh yeah, I remember doing this. Like, it's cool to go to a restaurant and, you know, order a green curry and be like, oh, remember when we ate this here? Or it just really brings you back to that moment. And I love remembering, you know, the way I felt in that moment. And I mean, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but I think it's cool to connect to that part of myself, I guess.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that's interesting on the kind of flip side for anyone who has spent a really long time traveling and is now back home, and maybe you've been home for a while and you're kind of getting a bit like ready to go do something new, but remembering those things that while you were traveling that you really missed about being at home. Mm-hmm. So I remember like I used to make this kind of salmon with like coconut rice stuff that I just loved. And when we were traveling, I was like, oh, I can't wait to be at home and make this again. And then I don't really do it.
I was going to say, it's kind of funny that you never make that anymore. That was a delicious meal though with broccoli.
But yeah, there's so many awesome things about being at home that you can kind of start to take for granted. Yeah. Food wise, but even bigger. So, touching into that mindset of what it was like traveling and appreciating the foods you liked there, but also the foods you missed about being at home, and remembering to go appreciate those while you are there.
Yeah, definitely. So if you want to find out more information, we'll put links, photos, everything on the show notes at www.theworldwanders.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter there, be the first one to know about new episodes and cool new content and all that sort of thing that's coming out.
Yeah, and we have our guide, which is out.
About South America?
Yes.
So kind of relevant. And you can get that if you sign up for the newsletter. So just go to theworldwanders.com and you will find the link for that. We'll also put it in the show description for the episode. If you want to connect with us, you can connect on Facebook or Twitter, The World Wanders, or send us an email at info@theworldwanders.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any foods that you really love from traveling, definitely send us what you love. Reach out to us. We're happy to hear from you.
Yeah. Have an amazing day.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.